So good morning, everyone. So the idea here is to take a little bit of a step back, because there will be a panel specifically dedicated to the recommendation that Michel presented. But here to take a step back and speak about the DSA in general. I mean, clearly, Maria, you have an important role, because you have an important role in an important regulator, the Irish one, which is a new one and has a key. And you remember that when this regulator was created, everyone else than in Ireland says it has to be better than what we have seen in data protection. And so I wanted to start with this first question. How, after this first year, how do you see the things going? You know, what thing has worked, when things should be improved, very general perception of the year.
Thank you very much. And thank you to CERRE, to Alex, and to all of the academics and the experts who've worked on all of these papers. I also just really wanted to take a moment to express our gratitude and our how much we value the work that's been done here, and how useful these papers, in particular these issue papers on protection of minors, are from CERRE. So thank you for that, and congratulations. So yes, I will of course start by focusing, I think, on taking stock of just how far we've come as a regulator and as a regulatory community. We, Coimisiún Meán, have gone from 40 staff 2 years ago to 200 today, roundabout. And we were, a year ago, ready on day one of implementation for the DSA, and I think that's something that we were particularly proud of, and particularly happy to be able to say now. We spent a lot of time without, preliminary funding, developing our approach and our regulatory framework for implementing the DSA, and the entirety of the online safety framework, which we see as a whole piece, drawing on both the DSA, but also instruments like the AVMS directive and the terrorist content online regulation as well, which are the tools that we have to make the online space safer for users. We have a large platform supervision and investigations department, which we've set up. We have a complaints department. We have a user experience department, which is focused on setting up a contact center for the public. And indeed, taking that really initial stance of making sure that the public in particular were aware of the rights that the DSA gave them was an approach that we really focused on from the beginning. We launched a public information campaign from the very beginning to encourage and to inform the public about how they could use the DSA, how they could contact us, and so on. And we've also developed various educational materials, including online safety education materials for schools, so that children and their parents have materials directly from us as a regulator to understand how to use the regulatory tools available to them. All, in our organization, we have about 120 people working on online safety in one way or another, including myself. So I mentioned the online safety framework, which we draw on. We also take a risk-based approach to supervision, which again is something that we spent quite a long time focusing on developing and ensuring was fit for purpose. And then I think the other thing that I just wanted to draw on was the fact that we are, as you said, we were formed on the basis of a previous regulator. We've had a long way to go. We have, of course, had a point to prove, and we are in the point of launching our first 3-year organizational strategy. And that's a strategy that really envisages the media landscape as a holistic environment, where we have a number of different levers and tools as a regulator to draw on. Some of those are enforcement tools, investigations tools, platform supervision tools, but there are other tools as well. We have a very, very substantial media literacy team and department, and we have put a lot of resources into launching journalism funding schemes, for example, which are also incredibly important in terms of our overall mission, which is to ensure that we have a thriving, safe, diverse media landscape and media environment. And we see that as a holistic whole, as an environment which is made up of the online space, of course, very substantially, but also various other media outlets that we're responsible for. So I think that's something we're very proud of. The other thing that I'd just highlight is actually the amount of cooperation and collaboration that has kicked off over the last year, and which we are at the we consider ourselves to be really at the center of. What has been demonstrated, I think, over the last year is that the DSA is a collective endeavor between regulators and the European Commission. And we are really, really committed to, and all DSCs and the Commission are committed to that collective endeavor. We have been associated with one of the European Commission's investigations, for example, into TikTok, and we're supporting on several others. And we work really closely with other digital service coordinators. We have, ongoing bilateral meetings with them on a very regular basis. We work closely with them in terms of passing complaints back and forth. It is really a whole European Union and cross-border endeavor here. We, for example, have been participating in a lot of the election roundtables that have been taking place around Europe. One of my colleagues is at the Romanian stress test today, for example, as well. And then, of course, we have the Digital Services Board, and I'll pause after that, but I think the Digital Services Board is particularly central to our coordination and our input and to making an impact in this regard. We are the vice chairs of the Working Group on Protection of Minors. My colleague is here who'll be speaking about our work in that group in a moment. But we also take a really active role in working groups dealing with data access under Article 40, with complaints process and complaints management, and really sort of working towards common approaches with our fellow regulators to raise best practices and to make an impact.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this very comprehensive description of what has happened. Now, I want to come back on the holistic approach, but before that, what was the difficulty you faced during this year, and how you tried to address them?
Yeah, no, there's no question that there's been challenges, and I sort of articulate them perhaps in two groups. Firstly, empowering people is hard. But not everybody wants to be empowered, and so there is that kind of job of raising awareness, being able to clearly articulate to the public what it is that their role is in relation to making the framework as effective as possible. The other thing that I think we've understood over the course of the last year is that the DSA does, as well as the public, it relies on the participation and the input of many different parties: civil society, academics, researchers of different types, and of course, the framework of trusted flaggers and out-of-court dispute systems. Now, all of these require funding, they require time, they require effort to be able to be set up and to work in partnership and in harmony with us as regulators and with each other. And that, I think, is taking time. And you can see that from the fact that, there are only a small number of trusted flaggers that have been certified. We haven't certified any yet. We have one ODS body that's certified in Ireland. It's working very well and very actively, but it's early days. So I think I'd articulate it as a challenge of time and of really sort of, reliance on so many different actors and different pieces of the ecosystem. And then I think the other thing is that cooperation is hard. And we are working with the European Commission with digital service coordinators. I mentioned it as a positive, but it's also a challenge. It's something we're working out. As we speak, we have, incredibly regular, very detailed meetings with both sets of stakeholders, and we're sort of learning by doing. And that is, as you can imagine, 2 steps forward and 1 step back at times. The other thing I think is that there is a difference of approach by different regulators. That's partly down to different legal frameworks. It's partly down to different sort of conceptual ideas of how the DSA should be enforced and implemented, much of which is not mandated in the legislation. And so learning that, understanding that, doing that kind of translation piece of how we're all working to find common approaches is also, quite a lengthy and detailed process. And I think that also leads to the final point I'd make, which is that there is clearly a common kind of communications piece that we need to work on and to articulate, and that is in progress. But to be able to talk about the impact of the DSA and the progress that's been made as one voice, as one community, is something we are still working on. And it's really important in the context of everything that's happening in the rest of the world, but also to be able to articulate at the national level the impact that this legislation is having. So I think that's a work in progress. I think we are making progress on it, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, thanks. So I couldn't agree more that it's easier to adopt a law than to change social norm, and that's probably one of the big challenge of the two law we are taking now, is that it is requiring all of us, in a way, to change our practices. And this is why, in fact, CERRE moved from Twitter to Blue Sky. But can I, and we will finish with that, I mean, having an holistic approach, as you say, or a kind of an ecosystem approach of policies, is very new for a regulator. In general, you are used to do one thing in your own field, and there is this Tierbergen rule, who said one tool for one objective, and so on. And here it seems to be everything upside down. I mean, everything is upside down anyway nowadays. But how, and I will finish with that, how a regulatory authority can adapt to that, because it's a completely new job, no?
Yes.
It's very different from what we are all used to. Do that.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why one of our organizational values is courage. Because I think you do have to it's a point at which we have to take a different approach. How we do it is, we're hoping to launch our organizational strategy very soon, and hopefully through that we'll be able to articulate and to demonstrate and communicate to all of you how we do that. But we do that through cooperation, through partnerships. We do that through good communications and through ensuring that we tie in and internally connect those different building blocks of our activities. I think to some extent we have the benefit of having come from being a media regulator. So some of those aspects of the work that I talked about were already the responsibility of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland before we took on the online safety tools. And I think that kind of gives us a bit of a leg up. But for other authorities, and of course I can't speak for all of them, but having encountered some of the organizations that have been given the role of digital service coordinator through the Digital Services Board, some of them are coming from competition, some of them are coming from telecoms infrastructure, and it's been really interesting seeing those regulators kind of start to engage with and think more and develop their own internal institutional structures to deal with questions which are really more social policy, content policy, media policy. There is a huge amount of enthusiasm and openness to doing so, and it's through support through those regulatory networks that I think we can all kind of get to that point where we are working in a more holistic way.
Thank you. I don't know if there is one or two questions in the room. Otherwise, we will move to the panel. But if you can give your name, affiliation, and keep to a short question if possible. There is the ladies there. Yeah. There, a mic is coming to you. It's wonderful. Important for the people online too.
Yes. Is this on?
Yeah.
Great. My name is Manisha. I'm from the Dutch Authority of Consumers and Markets. Hi.
I'm not sure it's on. In fact.
I don't think it's on. Now it's on.
You have to speak up.
I have to speak up. Okay. My name is Manisha and I'm from the Dutch Authority for Consumers and Market. Thank you so much for that wonderful overview of your wonderful work. You already mentioned quite briefly the collaboration between CSO and researchers, vetted or not, et cetera, et cetera. I was wondering, how do you approach them? Because I understand that, we have to, there's many campaigns that you've did to reach minors and other people, but how do you approach those kinds of organizations? Is there a campaign for them to teach them media literacy?
Thank you. Is there another question? Because we will only one round. No? Okay. Thank you.
So if the question is how does a regulator speak to civil society, then I think each regulator has to decide on its own strategy in relation to that. But openness and transparency is really key. And so we, again, as I say, we've had a very long-standing relationship with civil society and with academia in Ireland. So we have a good starting point for that. But I also think the Digital Services Board is really your friend here, because one of the tasks set out for one of the working groups is engagement with civil society. And so for me, and again, I am, I've worked for over, I don't know, 15 years in regulatory networks, and I'm particularly passionate about regulatory networks. I think that it's an incredibly efficient and effective way to reach communities is through that route, rather than necessarily doing it individually. Of course, you have to have your own relationships at the national level. The question about civil society and media literacy, I mean, I think civil society has probably got more to teach us about media literacy than the other way around, I might argue. But it depends who you're speaking to, of course. But the key is, is to have that dialogue, is to work through coordinating groups, to enter into discussions and dialogue, and then you find out what you don't know, and then you can learn from each other. Sorry, that's perhaps sounds a little bit idealistic, but I have seen it work, and it does work, and it works well through networks.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria, for this comprehensive analysis.